Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me thank you for being here. The stories on this podcast are meant to let you know that you're not alone in what you're going through and that we can all find strength in struggle with the right perspective. If you've been enjoying the podcast, let me ask that you leave a review on your platform of choice to help us grow so that we can continue to make the world a better place, one conversation at a time. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 134. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have such a special guest down in Texas, Nick Pags. Nick, what's up, man?
What's up, my brother? Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
It's such a pleasure. We first connected a few years back on a different podcast that no longer gets recorded, but still circulates the internet. And since then, we've connected a few other times, most recently in Zion National Park, so Utah. And I just felt like I had to have you on. And I think it'll become very apparent as we start this conversation why I wanted you on this podcast. But to start, Nick, if somebody listening has no idea who you are, how would you introduce yourself?
My name's Nick. I pride myself on at least trying or attempting to be a vibrant energy in any room I'm in with bringing just good energy, good vibes and love. So that's pretty much my focus of my life the last few years is how can I be that? And in terms of work, it's one of those stages of my career where I don't have what feels like a really fitting or comfortable title for myself, but a lot of people refer to me as a mindset coach or a perspective management coach, or a speaker. Any of those things really fit fine. I've been working with people in different capacities, one-on-one as well as group coaching over the years, and really started picking up the speaking stuff post-COVID. So getting into that as well. And yeah, man, I'm a soccer lover. I'm a family lover. I'm a friends lover. I love to just live life as much as I can so that when I wake up in the morning and go to bed, I feel different by the end of the day. Like I had done something that I'm super proud of. So I guess that's how I would describe myself at this current moment.
So this energy that you are bringing to the podcast, that you bring to the world every single day, have you always had this energy inside of you, or was this something that you were able to access at a certain point in your life?
It's a good question. I think I was born with a certain amount of, I think we all are, honestly, born with a certain amount of excitement for life, and then conditioning, patterns, life, being raised by whoever we're raised by, society, all that stuff kicks in and it starts to transform how we see ourselves and how we see ourselves in the world. And I think that I am a very, very, very different person than I was even 3-4 years ago. I was in the fitness industry. I owned a gym in Manhattan. I was in the fitness industry for 13 years, and my go-to was this very high energy, loud energy, proud energy. It was like in your face. You'll never forget me because I'm the loudest one in the room, which there was something really beautiful about that time in my life. And I still have that piece of me inside there, but I think I've shifted into still energy, but a more grounded energy over the last few years. COVID was a really powerful, unique time, I think, in our world. Completely different than anything we have ever understood, certainly people at our age, and maybe people in this lifetime. Is just such a massive shift in the culture and how we see each other and how we show up together. So I think that had a pretty big impact on me. So the groundedness has been, it was like requested. It wasn't like, oh, I want to do this and I'm going to consciously go that way. It was like, I felt like I was being asked to shift from this high go energy to a more grounded space. So yeah, I mean, I think it's in me. I think it's always been in me. And I think it's transformed into different shades of whatever color it is.
I love that answer. And to follow it up, one of the things that I heard you speak about recently was the topic of resistance and how resistance might not be something we always need to push through. Sometimes it might be something we need to listen to and let guide us. And that second piece is really challenging for a lot of people, myself included. How have you handled that in your life? Has it always been natural to identify the resistances that have been meant to guide you and maybe pivot rather than have to push through? Or have you had to fight with yourself a little bit as to how to navigate resistance?
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask you first of all, like when as a man growing up in our society, did you feel the same? And it's totally cool if you felt different. I felt like it was this very masculine push. Like in order to be a man, you got to fight through, you got to push through. Like that's kind of how you earn your stripes. Did you feel like that growing up?
100%.
Okay. So like that was what I was always, I guess, taught, learned, what I taught myself by watching what was happening in society. So everything was about, certainly in the fitness industry, we grow up learning and grow into that work, learning you got to push weight in order to get stronger. And then the classic metaphor of like, you don't get stronger until you break your body down, all this stuff. And there's truth to that, of course. Like I have found in my life that is held very true throughout. And there are times when it's not meant for us to grind and hustle and push through. On the contrary, that obstacle or that thing that presented itself, I'm finding in my life recently and with the people that I'm working with, maybe it's not maybe, I'm sure it's a shift in awareness that I'm having. So I'm seeing it more. Is that there's these things that come up and our natural instinct based off of our conditioning says you, in order to be worth anything, you've got to find a way to break through this thing, to fight the resistance, to grind and hustle through it. And of course, there are moments for that. But I'm finding that sometimes those things aren't resistance. Instead, they're guidance. It's like that sign on that road you were driving through, the detour sign sends you to the left. And part of you just is like, screw this. I want to go through. That's the normal path I go through. I'm supposed to go that way. But that detour is guiding you somewhere, and it's doing it for your safety. It's doing it with intention. It's doing it to protect you, to protect your car. So it's kind of that metaphor for me where sometimes I'm starting to learn that blockade that comes up, instead of getting mad and getting so obsessed with where I think I'm supposed to be going, can I check in and ask, is this thing actually guiding me to a new place that I'm meant to go? Can I listen to that guidance? And what would it look like to surrender to that guidance that's being offered?
So I love that imagery and that visual, and I agree with it. And I think for a lot of people, most of us, life doesn't give us detour signs that are so clear cut, right? There's no sign that pops up tomorrow that says detour, follow this for your safety. How do you make sense of that? How do you navigate that internally and actually figure out, should I follow this path? Should I blow through the resistance or should I take the detour? And how do you navigate the not knowing of that?
Yeah, I think that something that might even be more interesting, I'll answer that too. It's more interesting to see how I navigate that when I'm working with people because they're navigating those questions and I get to be an observer of that, which is super cool. So somebody's like, I don't know what to do. And I certainly don't know. Just because I'm working as your coach or whatever my role is, doesn't mean that I'm there with your answers for you. I'm there to help you get clarity on your answers. So I'm sitting there in the unknowingness with you. And what always allows people to get to a space of clarity is questions. And the quality of the question creates the quality of the answer, I believe. Like they really reflect each other. So I think powerful questioning is the way in which we can start to understand if that detour is a guidance or it's something we're designed to break through or push through or hustle through. And the more we ask powerful questions, like what's coming up here for me? What am I feeling? What is my intuition saying? I think that's a big part too, Joe. Like for me, as I answer that question for myself, I have spent a lot of time, specifically over the last like 2 years, I'd say, really getting intentional on understanding what the hell is intuition. Like I guess I have always had it. We all always have it. But really understanding when that voice is speaking, that intuitive voice, that voice that is so much more, it's wiser than my brain and the stuff I've learned. It almost feels like that intuition has lived many lives before I ever got here. It's this collective consciousness, this thing that I can't really explain, that sounds really ethereal, but I can tap in and just kind of hear that gut instinct. I've been practicing for myself a lot of understanding that. And the more that I'm working with people, I just want to hold space for them to listen to that thing. So I think when it comes to the yes or no things, the is this the right way or is this the wrong way? Should I resist and fight through, or should I let this guide me? The more that we can learn to grow comfortable listening to that intuitive voice, practicing listening to that intuitive voice and trusting that voice within us, I think it gives us better guidance and we can start to get clarity on those answers.
I love it. And it makes me think of, and so let me take a step back. I created Project Endure. I created this podcast in part because I want people to be able to find strength within their struggle. And our tagline, our motto is do hard things. I have it tattooed on my chest. And I believe in that. And I also think that doing hard things looks a lot different now for me than it did 2, 3 years ago.
Mm.
And there's this great quote from Steve Magnus who said, real toughness is experiencing discomfort or distress, leaning in, paying attention, and creating space to take thoughtful action. And I'm realizing that sometimes asking those questions and choosing to take the detour rather than pushing through the resistance is actually the hard thing. The hard
Yeah.
thing is not always pushing through.
Dude, I want, you are such a phenomenal example of this. And I'm so excited to like use you in this moment as an example, because when you look on anything that you put out in the world, you know, your podcasts, your social media, if someone were to go look at you, it is this guy that represents that grind, that willingness to let nothing stop him and push through. And it's so easily associated to wake up earlier, get that extra rep in, that extra set in, that extra workout in, go to sleep later because you made a commitment. It's so easy to associate that. But what I'm hearing you say, which is so profound, and I think somebody listening to this who's that hustle mode, grind mode, can really, really learn from you in this space, is that it's the hardest thing sometimes is slowing down. It is honoring that recovery day. It is trusting, and this is for so many people, for me definitely, dude. Like this has been a huge challenge. Maybe the hardest thing I've had to do over the last few years is not like grind and climb up the mountain. That stuff has become almost easier for me, I guess you could say. Like that's my instinct now. The hardest stuff has been, can you trust that everything is working even when you're not controlling it all? That like that detour, that turn left is designed for you. It's perfect for you, dude. And if you just trust it and you surrender to it rather than trying to fight through it, then it'll work with you. It's like being the water instead of the rock. You're so committed to like, this is the way it has to be. But what I'm hearing you say, what I think you reflect beautifully, brother, is this willingness to be the water, to just like, yeah, the hard thing for me today is to slow down. The hard thing for me to do today is not build another podcast, which might be the hard thing for somebody else. But for me, it's to sit home, be with my family, relax, settle myself, meditate, let go of that idea that I said I was going to do, but I can now intuitively feel that it's not the right place. I need to release that. Those types of things where there's a lot of trust involved. Dude, you are such a good example of that. So thank you for bringing that up.
I appreciate that so much, Nick. And it's something that I am working toward and will continue to work toward, I'm sure, for the rest of my life, like all of us. Now, with that being said, there's doing hard things, and then there are the hard things in life that we don't get to choose for ourselves. And I'm wondering for you in your life thus far, what is the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you did not get to choose at all for yourself?
Whoa. That's a powerful question. There's a part of me that's resisting that question because I have a belief on like a spiritual level almost that I've chosen all of it. And let me explain what I mean when I say that. And I'm sorry if this is like a little too like woo woo, but this is really where my heart is at right now. So I want to be honest. Is that I think that all that's happening, all the stuff I've come across, there's something here, if not a lot of things, but there's definitely a lesson, one big lesson or more that I'm here to learn. I don't think I came to this earth like on accident to just like experience it. I think there's some people call it karma. I don't know. Like there's something here for me to learn. And the reason I say that is because so much of my life, the moments that feel the most fulfilling, the moments that expand me the most, the moments that make me feel most human while simultaneously feeling the most divine I've ever felt are those moments where I learn something. It's like, whoa, that is like the juice of life, and the meat of life is really learning something that I feel like I came here to learn. So with that said, I think that there's a part of me, my divine self, us as humans, our divine selves know that we're here to learn that thing. So on a subconscious level, not like, oh, I'm going to create this problem. I think on a real subconscious level, we're designing a life built for us to learn that lesson. We are constantly creating situations and circumstances that will help us learn the toughest things we need to learn. So when you're asking like, what is the hardest thing kind of that I've had to face? I think I've created all of it. Maybe not intentionally, but with this deep subconscious system going on, it's like somehow I've manifested this thing for me to learn it. And if that's the case, and this is where the freedom lives for me, and this is what I've been sitting with a lot the last few months. If that challenging thing that I'm coming up across that I never could imagine myself actually choosing for me, if I hypothetically was choosing it, assuming this is all possible, then that's the thing I needed in order to grow and learn. So now I'm looking at it not as this problem that I'm facing that I'm so pissed about that it happened to me, victim mode. I'm actually looking at it as this gift, like truly this perfect experience that's being presented to me because it's the only way I could take the next step in my growth and development as a human, as a member of this earth with other humans and other spirits floating around. It's like, how the hell can I learn this thing that I'm designed to learn, which ultimately is going to do better for the world? Because I know when I'm a better person and I've grown through that thing, I'm going to be a better husband. I'm going to be a better friend. I'm going to be a better business owner. I'm going to be better in this world because I've learned that thing that I'm designed to learn. So now I'm looking at that quote unquote problem or circumstance that seems so hard as like, of course it seems hard because I designed it to be hard so I can grow through this thing. So now I'm living in the gratitude of it and the acceptance rather than the resistance to it, which creates this level of peace where it's like, yeah, the thing's hard. Like it's supposed to be hard because I built it that way. And how grateful am I that I get to design a curriculum of my life that allows me to become the person I ultimately choose to become.
That's such a beautiful sentiment. And the question that pops into my mind next is, do you know what lesson you feel like you're here to learn?
Dude, I was in the car with Bia yesterday. Bia's my wife. I was in the car with her yesterday talking about this. I asked her, she's going through some really tough hormone stuff. And what I'm learning is that a lot of women our age in their 30s and whatnot are dealing with this right now because of everybody taking birth control and what that does to your hormones and just craziness. Not to go down that path, but it's a really sad thing to watch because this decision is kind of made for them sometimes when they're young that, you know, you should be on birth control or whatever. And I'm not saying any of it is bad. I don't necessarily have an opinion. It's just watching somebody go through it who felt like she wasn't educated enough to make that choice and then made that choice and now is dealing with all the repercussions. So I asked her this question yesterday about everything I just said. Because if you're creating this, hypothetically, if we're coming from this space of you create your reality in order to learn what you need to learn, I said, babe, how is this thing perfect? Like, how did you create this for you so that you can learn? And ultimately, I asked her, what is her karma? What's her purpose? Why is she here? What is she here to learn? And then she asked me. I was like, that's a fantastic question. And I was like, I really need to sit with that. I mean, you're catching me in that question. This morning I was meditating on that and really just sitting with, what am I here to learn? I think a lot of it is around being seen and permission. For me, like these things kind of work together. I recently sent my dad a text, which my dad is truly one of the most amazing guys I know. He's just like, he's constantly giving, he's constantly serving. He's just truly one of the nicest people I know. But because I'm his son, there's always father-son BS. It's just part of the game of being father and son. There's always going to be that tough tension in some capacity. And him and I have had tough years in and out where things got more challenging with our relationship. And because of that, one of the things I taught myself, this was nothing he did. I'm sure he played a role to some extent, but I taught myself like it wasn't safe to have open conversation about certain things with my dad. When he said to me millions of times, you could come to me about anything, but there was this protection around certain topics. And one of them for me was around money, making money. And I had this association with money and my dad, and I won't go deep into it, but it was this real deep association that he is the breadwinner. He's the money guy. He's the guy when people look at him, dude, I seriously have never sat at a table that my dad hasn't paid for dinner. And as he said in this text back to me, there have been times when like paying for dinner wasn't like a feasible thing, but it's just who he is. So he does it anyways type of thing. So I have always associated him with this kind of money bags energy, which isn't necessarily true after we talked. And I sent this text message to him saying the way in which I go about money making, the way in which I choose to make certain money, not make certain money, to blow the roof off this thing and create something huge versus sit back and play a small game of life is so dependent on what I think he thinks about money, which is my identity of him. Like what I think my dad thinks about money is that he is the money guy and he's the breadwinner and he needs to be the guy that makes the most money, that pays for things. He's never said that. And on the contrary, when I explained all this to him, which was a 15 years in the making text message, like I had this really kind of gut instinct to tell him. And I sent him that text and he's like, I hope you see me as more than money, because that's my personality is so much more complex and deeper than that, which is, he's so right. And it was just amazing to hear the stories that I had made up about who he is and how that has affected who I am and what I've allowed myself to do financially in my life. So I think that piece is a lot of my lesson, is being seen, like just allowing myself to look silly, make mistakes, fail. Again, a big issue with the American male society thing is like, it's frowned upon if you fail. I mean, dude, from kindergarten on, or I guess we started getting A's through F's in like second grade. Like a fail, I got detention. A fail, I got in trouble at home and was grounded. A fail, I had to redo things and was frowned upon. A fail was recognized as this bad thing. And Sarah Blakely, the first self-made woman billionaire in America, would go home from school. She tells this story beautifully, and I don't want to butcher it, just repeat the context of it, which is she would go home from school and they would sit at the dinner table and her dad would ask, what'd you fail at today? And if she didn't have an answer, she got quote unquote in trouble, whatever the punishment was. So a woman who has created such a successful life, the big difference between her and everybody else in our society is that she has an association with failure that makes her feel good. It's like she is actually hunting for things hard enough for her to fail at, and then celebrated when she pushes herself to that level of experience. So part of my karma, I guess I would say, in a very long-winded version, is to accept me in all facets of me, the me that wins, the me that excels in things, and then the me that kaputs and flops and makes mistakes and fails, and celebrate all of that and be seen in all of that and not need to hide from my mistakes or my non-perfection.
There's so much depth to what you just said, and it resonates with me in many ways. I'm imagining it's resonating with the people listening. And one of the most interesting pieces of all of that is that the podcast episode that you, me, and Sam Tooley recorded way back, I'll say 2.5 years ago, you mentioned taking an intentional step back from the gym space, an intentional step back from the money. And you had mentioned in that podcast episode how there was some, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth. We'll go back and listen. Maybe it was fear, hesitation, concern about how your dad would view that move. And
Really?
yeah, I remember that very
Wow.
clearly. And I was inspired by your ability to detach from money in that season. And I would love to hear more about how you view money now that you're coming to all of these realizations.
Yeah. Oh, what a loaded question, dude. I really invite someone as like just a exploration of personal development. I've been on a super intense journey the last 2.5 years. I would invite someone to go listen to that. If you could tag that episode,
Yes.
I'm gonna do it after this because I want to hear me 2.5 years ago. It's such a beautiful part of life being able to witness ourselves in our journey. So like seeing where I was and the perspectives I had 2.5 years ago, I'm sure there's a lot of things maybe that contradict each other, and like let that, again, part of my practice is learning to let that be okay rather than like, wow, I was such an idiot, or I can't believe I didn't know this 2.5 years ago. Like I didn't know it, and that's beautiful, and it's amazing that I'm shifting into this new season. So I'm gonna check that out. Thank you for saying that. Your question was about money now. So I've I've found that money more than anything represents a value exchange, an energy exchange, if you want to call it that, which I don't think is a new thing for a lot of people, but maybe this is the first time you're hearing that perspective. Is that it really represents a type of energy, and I've started to integrate this into my business. I've started to integrate this into my life in ways in which I really like. I sit with my wife when we're making decisions, and I'm like, how does it feel when we're going to invest in that thing? You know, what is it what is it creating for us? What opportunity is it generating? Because opportunity in itself is energy. It's creating momentum in life. So sometimes we're spending money on things that people will be like, "Wait, why would you spend that much?" I mean, for travel, for example, it's October now, or it's November today, I guess. October last year, exactly a year. We have we've been home for a total of 2 months, I think, in Austin, and have been traveling it would come in 2 days here, then 3 days here, and whatever. 2 total months we've been home, give or take. Tons of travel. That's a lot of plane tickets. That's a lot of showing up at hotels and Airbnbs. So, I mean, we've spent, if we look at the numbers, a pretty wild amount of money. And it's not because we're rolling filthy in money and just feel like spending. It really has been asking this question of each other. What is the energy exchange here? What are we getting out of this? What is it? How is this serving us? And is it an equal exchange? Is it an exchange that feels good for us? So I really have been looking at money in that way. And even with my business, it's a really weird thing to sit with people and tell them what you charge to sit and talk with them. I come from a background at my education, formal education was in counseling and human services. So I started to question that in college. How do you value sitting with somebody for an hour and talking through something if that one conversation changes the trajectory of that person's entire life, and like heals a relationship with a loved one, or makes them, shift into a more powerful decision around what job they take, and then they ultimately end up making tens of thousands or maybe millions of more dollars than they ever would because of that one conversation? How do you value that type of conversation, right? I mean, it's fascinating to me. So I've always been confused by this. And then what people do is they look at the societal norms or the industry standards, and that's how they choose. And that's totally appropriate too. I'm not fighting that. For me, something didn't fully resonate with me about that. So even with business now, it's very much about what's the exchange. I work with people who are in a really tough season. And I'll tell them what we're up against right now is really tough. This is going to take a lot of energy from me. Here's what I believe would be a fair exchange for me. And you don't have to receive that. You could say, okay, cool, that doesn't work for me. And it's been this really cool, not negotiating, maybe that's the word, but it's been this like, how does the energy fit for us? Does that feel like a fair energy exchange for you to put that amount of dollars out, knowing that we're creating this type of value for your life? And it gets even harder because half the time people don't know what value they're actually trying to create for themselves in this type of work. They just know they want this, they know they want that. So we start to go down that path. And I'm very clear, like there's no timeline on this stuff. And the divine nature of this work, there can't be time attached to it. So it's not a sales pitch. I'm very blatant with people. I'm like, first, I can tell you the first 3 months is probably going to suck pretty bad because it's a lot of ripping you apart. And then once you rip that piece of you, that egoic piece of you, that identity piece, and you start to have the awarenesses, then we can start to make some change. So really within 6 months, you'll start to feel really great, but you're probably going to want to continue this work. So I'm not telling you like, get on this and you're going to be addicted to it forever. I'm telling you that you will find a piece of you, a way in which you show up that you're really going to like. And you're probably going to want to continue that. My work is to be able to help people feel empowered so that they don't need to pay somebody to do the work on themselves. On the contrary, they learned how to ask powerful questions of themselves so that they can get through challenging times. So it really is a challenging thing, I think, for a lot of people, and certainly for me, trying to understand money in which the way that I want it to. But I think I just see it as this energy exchange thing, man, like anything else. You know, if you do this for me, I do this for you type of thing. If I pour in this way to you, what do I receive back? And sometimes they don't give me anything back, whoever they is in that moment. It's like just the doing of it is an energy exchange enough. You know, like I'm filled up. You've experienced this before. When we're giving, it's so fulfilling. That's the beauty of giving. And I don't want my whole life to just be giving all the time because I will not be able to live the life I want because life takes money.
Mm.
But a lot of times it's like, dude, the guy on the street that I drove up to the other day, he's like, oh, I work for this church with addiction and whatever. And I gave him whatever I gave him, a couple bucks. And I'm not expecting anything in return from him. And I felt like that was a fair energy exchange because I was like, this just feels, you're holding the space for me to be able to give in a small way. I get to give. I feel full from that. That's awesome. So it's an energy exchange thing in my eyes.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And there's a lot of nuance to it. Obviously, everybody has their own perspective when it comes to money. And I think what you said will resonate with many people. And so to move on, one other area that I've personally been curious about, because I heard you speak about it a little bit recently, is just the challenge of building a meaningful, solid, lasting relationship, because you and Bia have a beautiful relationship that is so easy. It's so easy to see that when you two are together. And I loved getting to experience that. So I would love to know what are some of the challenges that come along with building that type of relationship? And what's the best part of that type of relationship?
Well, if we go back to, thank you for saying that. I think it's an amazing relationship as well. And I'm really proud of it and proud of her and proud of what we created. We have a pretty wild story. I'm actually in a process right now. It's my first time telling anybody this in public, but we're actually writing a book about the entire experience, not from a story of like, here's our loving relationship and read about us. It's from a personal development space. So it's like taking these little pieces of the story and curating it in a way where people can see themselves in that story and use it for relationship in any way. Relationship with self, relationship with God, relationship with food, relationship with health and wellness, relationship with money, all of it. So it's using our story as an example for that, which I'm really excited to do. But it's helping me explore and reflect on all these different parts that have created what is today in our relationship. And there are beautiful moments, there are really challenging moments, there's all of it. But again, back to what we started this call with, there's almost this, it's this constant learning experience. It's like I created this woman. And I don't mean that from like a crazy egomaniac way, like I did it all. I believe she created me, I created her. We did this in tandem with that higher power, whatever it is. It's a co-creation of these moments so that we can learn about ourselves. And the very brief of our story is that she's from Brazil, was living in Brazil, moved to Malaysia right after we had met. I was living in New York. COVID happened. We met in September 2019. So COVID happened soon thereafter. I tried moving to Brazil a couple times, but I kept struggling with borders getting closed and all that. So eventually in 2021, January, I moved to Brazil. And my intention was to be there, I guess, indefinitely until I felt like a change was needed. And we learned along the way some of like the issues with just kind of moving to a country, and there's things you have to do that I kind of neglected to do. And at one point got detained in the airport by the Brazilian federal police for 11 hours. And I did nothing wrong, by the way. There was nothing illegal about what I was doing. It just happens sometimes. They like to pick fights with Americans and Americans with Brazilians sometimes in the airport. So we were in this position where I was there, and the choice, we ultimately got me out of that situation. I was back in Brazil, but we sat down and said, we got to figure this out. Like, we have to figure out the next step because we can't keep doing this. And she brought up the idea of marriage. And in my head, Joe, I don't know if I've ever told you this, like, I wasn't a marriage guy. I was like, let's just kind of be life partners. And then if we feel like it's not working anymore, we could tap out. Like, that really was the way. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I was a much more free flowing dude. And as we started to talk about this, I realized the fear I had around it was this concept of I'm going to lose me. Once I become Nick and Bia, I'm no longer Nick. And we started working with a couples coach, which I cannot emphasize enough, the power of having a third party support you in working out challenges. Yes, it needs to be somebody who's good. Yes, it needs to be somebody that you create a level of professional trust with. But dude, I mean, that saved our relationship, not because we were in like this terrible place, but because there were certain ways in which we were communicating that wasn't effective. Because I had ways that I wanted to be communicated with. And what do we do when we want to be communicated with that way? That's how we communicate with people, because it's what we like to receive. But that person has the same thing, a different way of communicating and a different way of receiving communication. So we need to get on the same page with that. So I was finally able to communicate that I felt like if I got married to her, I was going to lose Nick. And I love Nick. And I've worked really hard to be able to say I love Nick. I've worked years to be able to say that. And I wasn't willing to give that up for anybody, even though I was so crazy about this person. I mean, I told her I loved her 2 days after I met her. Like, I knew right away this was the person I wanted to do life with. But it really was this terrifying decision I had to make. Either I lose myself or I lose her. And nobody should ever have to be in that place. And I remember trying to communicate that, and having that third party was so massive. So shout out to Rob Israel. And as I sat in that session with Rob, he said to me, Nick, you got to break this down, man. There is you as Nick. This is a separate entity. There's Bia, and she's a separate entity. And there's the us, which is a third entity of the two of you. And all three of those entities are a part of this relationship, and they must all be taken care of and nurtured in order for the relationship to be successful. Dude, when that hit, it changed my entire life. First of all, ever since that day, I've been seeing these things in threes, like all these Trinity looking things, just situations where it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Everything is threes. Not everything. I've been seeing a lot of these three moments. And I think there's something very spiritual about things working in threes. I mean, 1 is by yourself, 2's company, and 3's a party. And like, I want life to be a party. So as I started to see this triangle of relationship, I had to continue, and I still continue to do a lot of work on taking care and growing myself. And she does the same for her. And that allows us to be exceptional in our relationship. And we still work with this coach. We still do it regularly. We still have complete messy breakdowns, but we stopped judging that a long time ago. There's an acceptance that that's what this is about. Like, we're actually in this relationship to grow through those things. And I mean, the ring I got her, we got married soon thereafter. Very crazy. Didn't tell anybody except our immediate families, kept it hush hush for like 4 months because we were getting married before we even knew what marriage meant to us, but it was the only way we could stay together. And when we did that, over time, I started to realize this woman deserves to be proposed to. And so I started to organize that. So about a year and a half after we got married, I flew my whole family down to Brazil. I surprised her and I proposed to her this past January. And when I gave her the ring was 3 diamonds. It was 2 small ones and a large one in the middle. And it represented that Trinity, so that every time she looks down at her hand, she's reminded that this isn't just me, this isn't just her, and this isn't just us. It's the three of us. So I believe that a relationship, in order for it to be peaceful, grounded, expansive, and something that we all really want, which is filled with love, we've got to learn to love ourselves first, and we got to let that person do their work to love themselves. And if both aren't happening, I think that third entity of the us is always going to struggle.
I'm a romantic, Nick. It sounds like you are as well.
Yeah.
That needs to be a movie. I mean, the proposal after the marriage is such a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. And a lot of that again resonated with me. And I'm wondering, because I've had a lot of people ask me this question or have this conversation with me, does somebody need to learn how to love themselves before they can fully learn how to love somebody else? I'm curious your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different for every person. I really do. And I think that if, again, listening to those signs that are guiding you, if a relationship is put in front of you and your intuition says, this is where I need to be right now, then maybe, in order for you to take your self-love to the next level, this person had to be integrated into that, right? I don't think that self-love is a thing that's achieved where it's like, I'm done. I think it's it's like the universe. It's always expanding. It just keeps getting bigger. I think that self-love thing, there's levels to which we learn to love ourselves, but it just keeps expanding. So my self-love process certainly did not get achieved and then I met Bia. That's for sure. It wasn't I met Bia and then it was achieved. It's every single day it's still growing, but I have learned in my process to love thyself, which is like a massive journey. And I'm learning that. And now there's a new level of loving myself that I have not achieved, and a new level and a new level. And it just keeps expanding. So I think that for some people, the step they must take in order to love themselves is to have somebody else in their life. And then other people, in order to have somebody else in their life, the step they need to take is certain steps within themselves to create an immense amount of self-love or a grounded level of self-love so that they can be who they need to be and what they need to be for other people. And I think the last thing I'll say about this is, and this was like one of the scariest conversations I had in my life because I had so many stories about what it would bring up. But I remember saying to Bia the morning we were getting married, again, nobody knows this is happening. I'm in another country. I forgot to text my family and let them know we were doing it. Literally, I forgot to text them. Like they knew I was getting married, but I forgot to text them the day. And that sounds insane as I say that out loud. Let me preface, I have a very tight-knit family, 3 siblings, 4 siblings, and my parents, we're super tight. So this is not like I don't talk to my family very much. Like I talk to my family every day. The thought of getting married without them being there just would have just an impossibility. So of course, life gives us the thing that we never expect could exist. And because this happened so quickly and because it was such a challenging situation and I wasn't even sure that what we were doing was the right play and neither was she, there was almost like a shame around it. So I think because of that, we weren't like texting people excited about, hey, we're getting married today. It was this like big fear thing. And I remember I went to the gym in the morning because obviously got to get a pump before you get married. And I come home and I am bawling my eyes out. I call my mom and I am bawling my eyes out. Like, is this the right thing? I don't know what to do. I feel alone. I haven't talked to any of my best friends about this. I don't have my brother as my best man there. I mean, it was this really scary situation, which is not what you want to feel on a wedding day. And after that conversation with my mom, she like kind of cooled me down. My mom was bawling her eyes out. She was feeling really bad. And And I walk in and Bia comes out of the house and she says, "What's the matter?" And she gives me this big hug. And I said, "I just need you to know that if truly, if we're going to do this, you can't need me and I can't need you. Like we can't," which is such a screwed up thing to say the day you're about to get married. But I realized, because of all that stuff we'd been talking about in the you, me, us, that in order for this to actually be what we want it to be, it can't be this codependent experience. And I said, if we're going to do this, I need you to continue. It was more about me. I was saying it to me. I said it to her, but I meant it for me. She was being my mirror. It was like, I need you to continue to just be the woman you need to be for you. And just because we're doing this doesn't mean you're like signing off on responsibility for your life and handing it over to a husband, and vice versa. And the way in which that was communicated, I didn't say it the way that I said it that day in this moment, but it was something that hit her and she got it and I got it. And from that point forward, our whole entire journey was about being who we need to be for ourselves so that we can be who we need to be for each other.
I can't wait for this book to come out.
Me too.
And as that continues, as that writing process continues, it's going to be a long journey, right? Your marriage, any relationship that's going to stand the test of time needs endurance. And this is the Project Endure podcast. And so whatever comes to mind for you, Nick, I'd love to hear it. But what does the word endurance mean to you?
So funny. I've always worked in sprints, and I was a soccer player, so that didn't fit very well because you really need endurance for soccer, right? And as an athlete, I was designed to be a football player. My body was designed to be a sprinter. Like, give me 10 seconds all out, I'm a beast. Give me like a 2-mile run or a 5-mile run, I'll hate every second. It kills me. So endurance has always been a challenge for me, in that my brain wants to accomplish and be done, accomplish and be done, accomplish and be done. And this long stretched out version of it, really, I think endurance is about, I guess I would say, dropping into that experience enough to not let time control you anymore, but more your vision and your commitment. Right. So it's like, when I think about the wedding or the marriage and my relationship with my wife, endurance is about my commitment. And can I continuously recommit every single moment, not just every single day, like every single moment. It's this willingness to recommit, so that ultimately I'm not looking for, I think the old me, why I didn't want to get married to anybody, was I wanted sprinting relationships. I'll sprint it to this one. I'm done. If I need to move on to the next, I will. If I like it again, I'll sprint this one again. Very like selfish mentality in that way. Whereas this endurance space, and the way that I'm seeing it in this moment, is about trusting the process and not getting attached to a timeline. Oh, this is going to take me an hour. This is going to take me 2 hours, this run. Rather, I'm committed to there, wherever that there is, that space, that distance, that amount of effort. That's what I'm committed to. And if I can stay in integrity with that, I'm not going to let time, I'm not going to let the fatigue, I'm not going to let really anything get in my way of that vision. I'm just going to keep navigating the detours and trusting the guidance.
It reminds me of a John Maxwell quote who said, "Don't ask, when will it be over? Ask, how far can I go?" And, one of my favorite parts about this podcast is getting to ask that question specifically to, at this point, 134 different people, and get 134 different answers that all share these common elements. And I love what you said about needing to recommit over and over and over again, because I think a lot of people look at something like endurance and they look at it like one commitment that gets carried out over a long period of time, when in reality, I do agree with you where you do need to recommit. You do need to do what you said you would do, stay more or less on the path you set out to be on, as long as it continues to serve you and stay in alignment with you and where you want to go and who you want to become. But that requires recommitment. It requires consistent, continuous recommitment.
Yeah. what's coming up for me is this thing I shared. It's ironic that I shared this yesterday. I have a group on the app Telegram. So this Telegram group is called Lighthouse, and it's this space. It's a broadcast, not a group. It really is just a space where I drop voice notes in there once every day or two. And they're usually 5 to 10 minute voice notes. And it's just a thought that's in my heart or in my mind. And we've built that community up, and I want to see it continue to grow because it's beautiful. There's nothing in there. It's just this voice note. That's all it is. There's nothing more. There's no sign up for it. There's no payment. It's just this free space to connect to yourself. And yesterday I dropped this concept based off of this study that was done in Harvard. I don't know if you've heard of this one. In 1957, I think the year was, they did this study with rats in a pool. Have you heard this?
No.
Bro, this is going to be your jam. Okay. So I'll be quick. So they did this study. They put rats in a pool, and they wanted to see how long they could tread water before they drown. So it sounds really dark, but at the end of they're swimming, and they gave up, they would pull them out right as they started to drown. They go underwater, they'd pull them out, and they dry them off and let them chill. So that first trial, they put them in, and the rats lasted 15 minutes treading water. Okay. Until they completely hit exhaustion. They gave up and they started to drown. So they pull them out, they wipe them off, they give them 2-3 minutes. And then they put them back in the water. So let me ask you what your thought is. How long on round 2 do you think these rats lasted?
My instinct would be to say they lasted less than 15 minutes.
Less than 15, right? So yeah, I was like, if somebody's making a video about this, it's got to be inspirational. So maybe they lasted like 15, 20. They like did it again, right? Joe, these rats lasted 60 hours. Bro, that's 2.5 days of treading water. So what they came to the conclusion of in this study was that the belief that the rats would be saved allowed them to tread water to improve their performance by 240x. So what I'm learning from that concept is that the difference between the results we have in our life or the endurance that we currently have and a 240x shift is not years and years and years of practice. It's not getting they didn't sit there and educate the rats on how to better tread water or a way to like improve their treading abilities in those 2 minutes they braked. It was a belief that they were going to be saved that allowed them to 240x the results. So then I thought to myself, as you're saying this, I'm like, what's endurance? Endurance is really about a belief, right? And when I say that vision or that where we're seeing ourselves going, when we believe we're going to get there, what's the saying is something like when the why is powerful enough, we can endure anyhow, or something like that. When we really believe we're going to get to that space, we might 240x what we think we can do just because we believe we're going to get there. So endurance to me, as we're talking about it, is really about a belief in that vision you have for yourself. And if you believe it deep enough, you'll always find a way to tread water just another minute, just another minute, just another minute.
That is wild.
Isn't that insane?
Insane.
Thank you, Harvard. Great study.
Yeah. So I'm glad to know that they didn't let the rats actually drown.
They did not kill any rats in the study. That's good news.
That's good. So with that being said, I think you almost answered my next and final question, but I'm going to frame this to you in a different way than I usually do. So what I usually say is, there are people all over the world listening to this podcast, going through hard things, challenging seasons, just feeling a little bit overwhelmed or lost. And you get a chance to encourage them, give them some guidance, help them believe. I love your concept of powerful questions and powerful questions helping us discover deep down who we are. If you could ask somebody 1 or 2 or maybe even 3, if you're feeling great, powerful questions to somebody who is in a tough season, a dark place, and granted, you don't have more context, so this is difficult, but 3 blanket powerful questions, what would you ask somebody in this moment?
Who do you want to be? What do you want to create? And why is this perfect?
Tell me more about that third question and we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah. So the third question is predicated on the first two. Who do you want to be? And this is based off of the be, do, have model, which is not mine. It's something that was taught to me years ago, which really I embody, is this idea of be what you want to see before it exists. So be that guy, then take the action. Like, most people are living from the have, do, be. Like, I want to have money, so then I got to go do all the things to make money. That's what everybody's doing. And of course, everybody's struggling to make money. But if I say what I want to have is $1 million, then who's the millionaire being? Like, how are they sitting? How do they speak to people? How do they show up for work? How many hours do they sleep? What type of wellness protocol do they have? What type of education do they have? Be that guy. Just be him before he even exists. Then take the action that's aligned with being him. So when I ask, who do you want to be? I'm really asking, like, what type of not what results do you want to get? What type of person do you want to be? And then create your little to-be list in the morning. Like, I want to be joyful and I want to be peaceful today. That's it. Be that. And then you'll end up taking action that's aligned with it when you're being it fully. So that's why asking the beingness is so important. And then what do you want to create? That's like the vision. What am I committed to creating in my life? When I have a clear vision, it's everything we just talked about with the rats, right? Ultimately, how is this perfect? To me, is the most powerful question we can ask ourselves on a regular basis, because you are coming from the assumption that whatever the circumstances that you're facing was designed perfectly for you. And a lot of us are so stubborn, Joe, that this wasn't supposed to be this way and this shouldn't be this way. And what's killing you, the problem is not the problem. The problem is your perspective about the experience. And if we can honor the experience and not make the experience a problem, but instead have a new perspective on it that serves us, it changes the entire context of how we show up. That thing that we're confronted with actually becomes a piece of our life that's in service to us creating the life we say we want. So when I ask you how it's perfect, or when you ask yourself, how is this perfect, to any given moment, you now are looking from a lens of choosing. You've already chosen that this thing was perfectly designed for you. So now you just need to find it, because the truth is, we're going to find proof for anything we believe. This is why religion is so powerful. People will find God in anything if they believe in God. People will find Jesus in anything if they believe in Jesus. People will find whatever they want to find in anything if they believe it strong enough. So when I ask you from a powerful question, isn't like, oh, is this thing kind of working for you maybe? That's not a powerful question. Let the question guide you and lead you into a new perspective. How is this thing perfect? Now you have to do searching. Don't lie to yourself. Now you need to navigate the moment and get clear on the pieces that are actually perfectly built for you to become the person you say you want to become and live the life you say you want to live.
We've got our episode title right there. Why is this perfect?
Bingo.
It's amazing. Nick, if people want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about what you do, or just reach out and thank you for this conversation, where's the best place for somebody to do that?
The best place. So I am on social. I have not been active on social in 2 years, which is a whole nother topic for another day. But I do go in and I answer DMs all the time. So you can find me on my Instagram at Nick Pags, my name, N-I-C-K. I'm sorry. I am Nick Pags. I-A-M N-I-C-K-P-A-G-S. And then you can also hit me up on my website. There's information there, nickpagsllc.com. So you'll see more about me there, what I do, and how to connect. Anywhere on the website, you'll see that. So come see us. Oh, and the Lighthouse group, Joe. Get them in the Lighthouse group, man. I'll give you the link for that. It's a free space. Like I said before, here's some good positive stuff like this every single day on your phone straight to you. So it's a really beautiful space to jump in and have some guidance and support.
I will link it down below so it's easy to find and easy to access. And Nick, I just want to thank you for this conversation, for the way that you show up in the world, and just for the way that you love life, because it truly is contagious. And I'm very grateful for you, man.
Right back at you, brother. I appreciate our brotherhood, and I look forward to continuing to grow our connection. And thank you for the work that you do, because I know you bring some beautiful voices on this podcast and beautiful minds and hearts. And the more that good energy can be put into the world, the better this world's going to be. So thank you for doing your work, man.
Thank you, man.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Endure Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.